She has been gone for more than 30 days. No ransom, no proof of life, no body. But inside her chest, a machine is still running, still sending a signal, still reaching out. And the FBI is doing everything in its power to hear it. Welcome back to Cold Case History. I am going to walk you through every detail of this case, the footage, the forensics, the suspect behavior, the DNA, and the digital evidence trail. If you are new here, subscribe now and hit the notification bell. We cover every update on cases like this one the moment they break. And trust me, this one is not finished breaking yet. Let's begin at the beginning. Developing tonight, investigators working the disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie have uncovered a glove near her Tucson area home. Her family has formally been cleared of any involvement, and federal authorities have deployed what sources are calling a signal sniffer, a piece of technology mounted to a helicopter and aimed at a single target. The Bluetooth signal coming from Nancy's own pacemaker. A cybersecurity and digital forensics expert told CBS News that even with long odds, every available tool is going to be used in a case like this one. For 31 days, Nancy Guthrie's family has existed in total silence. There has been no phone call, no ransom demand that went anywhere, no knock at the door, nothing. But Nancy herself, or at least the device implanted in her chest, has not gone quiet. Not once. Her pacemaker has been transmitting continuously since the night she was taken. It transmitted while the person who abducted her drove her away. It transmitted while her daughter Savannah stood in front of cameras pleading for her mother's safe return. It is transmitting right now as you watch this video. The FBI just hasn't been able to pinpoint it yet. Nancy Guthrie lived by herself in the Catalina foothills, a quiet neighborhood north of Tucson, Arizona. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos described her as mentally sharp, fully alert, fully present. No cognitive decline whatsoever. But her body told a different story. She was limited. She struggled to walk even short distances on her own, suffered from chronic pain, and depended on daily medication to stay stable. Her family was direct about it. She could not walk 50 yards without help. Her heart was fragile. And without her medication, investigators warned publicly in the first hours of the search, she could deteriorate within 24 hours. Inside her chest sat a pacemaker. The device regulated her heart rhythm and communicated with a dedicated app on her smartphone through Bluetooth Low Energy, a low-power wireless protocol designed to keep devices connected over short distances without draining battery. She also carried a daily medication regimen that could not simply be skipped. Investigators said so from day one, and that medical urgency is the very reason this case has a digital dimension at all. Without the pacemaker, the last trace of Nancy Guthrie would have been her front door going dark on a camera. With it, there is something investigators can actually chase. A signal, a pulse, evidence that hasn't stopped. The night of January 31st, Nancy had dinner at her daughter Annie's home. Her son-in-law, Tommaso Tione, drove her back and walked her in at 9:48 in the evening. That is the last confirmed moment anyone saw Nancy Guthrie in person. Everything that follows has been rebuilt entirely through digital timestamps. At 1:47 in the morning, Nancy's Nest doorbell camera went offline. FBI investigators later pulled back-end data from the camera manufacturer's servers, residual footage showing a masked, armed individual tampering with the device at her front door. 41 minutes after that, at 2:28 a.m., the pacemaker app on Nancy's phone logged a disconnection. The phone was still inside the house. Nancy was not. That 41-minute gap is the digital skeleton of this entire crime. Between 1:47 and 2:28, Nancy was still within Bluetooth range of her own phone, still in the house or very close to it. When the connection dropped at 2:28, it meant one thing. She had been moved more than 10 to 15 feet from her nightstand. She left that house, and she did not leave by choice. By noon on February 1st, Nancy had missed her virtual church service, something her family said she never did. When they arrived at the house, she was gone. Blood drops, later confirmed as Nancy's, trailed from the entryway toward the driveway. There were signs of forced entry. Her phone was inside. Her Apple Watch was still on the counter. The physical trail simply ended at the driveway. No footprints to follow. No scent trail a dog could hold. The only trail that continues from that point is electronic, and it is originating from inside Nancy's body. Investigators worked directly with the pacemaker manufacturer and confirmed that the device uses Bluetooth Low Energy, an engineering choice built for longevity, not speed. It doesn't need to be paired with a phone to keep transmitting. It doesn't need Wi-Fi or a cellular signal. Dr. Lawrence Epstein, a cardiology professor at the Donald and Barbara Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra/Northwell, confirmed publicly that the device is still functioning independently. Sheriff Nanos added more specifics, citing information from the manufacturer, He said Nancy's pacemaker has 6 to 7 years of remaining battery life on a device engineered to last a decade. The signal is not going anywhere. Now, experts have offered different perspectives on exactly how often the device broadcasts. Cybersecurity analyst David Kennedy has estimated the signal pulses every 2 to 3 minutes. Other experts in the field have noted that most pacemakers are built with power-saving protocols, meaning they transmit data at predetermined intervals, often once per day, which would make the signal pattern more intermittent than Kennedy's estimate. But on the central question, there is complete agreement. The pacemaker is still transmitting. What investigators needed was a way to hear it. The FBI made a decision that would shape the next phase of this investigation entirely. They were going to find that signal. News Nation reporter Brian Enton was the first to spot what that meant in practice. A compact device had been bolted to the skid of a Pima County Sheriff's helicopter flying slow and low over the Tucson metro area in deliberate grid patterns. An FBI source confirmed to News Nation that this was, in the source's own words, sophisticated FBI technology. The device is known as a signal sniffer. Its mission was precise: identify one specific Bluetooth MAC address, the unique digital fingerprint of Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker, and locate it among potentially thousands of competing signals in the search area. The helicopter flew at reduced altitude and reduced speed. Each pass could only cover a narrow strip of ground, limited by how far a Bluetooth signal actually travels. Under standard conditions, that range is 10 to 15 feet. A signal sniffer equipped with directional antennas and amplifiers can push that further, but the physics of deploying it from a helicopter are unforgiving. The pacemaker transmits in short bursts. The aircraft has to be close enough, at the right altitude, at the exact moment a transmission occurs. Miss the timing by seconds. Drift 100 feet off course. The signal disappears into a wash of noise from thousands of other Bluetooth devices below: car systems, wireless earbuds, smart home gadgets, all competing on the same frequency band. Experts quickly identified the structural problems. Morgan Wright, CEO of the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases, raised a fundamental concern. The helicopter's metal fuselage can interfere with a weak Bluetooth signal. Metal reflects and absorbs radio frequency energy. The very machine designed to find the signal may be undermining its own ability to hear it. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffin-Daffer was equally candid. She described the helicopter deployment as a Hail Mary, not because the technology itself was broken, but because the delivery platform was working against the physics of what it was trying to detect. Jim Jones, a cybersecurity and digital forensics professor at George Mason University, put it in the starkest possible terms. He compared it to scanning your backyard for a small object using a microscope. You have to be in exactly the right spot at exactly the right moment. From a helicopter covering miles of desert, those odds are enormous. But investigators didn't walk away from the problem. They adapted. Wright and Kennedy developed a drone-based version of the signal sniffer, built specifically to address everything the helicopter couldn't do. Drones fly lower, as close to ground level as the mission requires. They move slower. There is no metal fuselage interfering with the signal, no engine vibration disrupting the frequency. Kennedy tested the prototype using off-the-shelf modifications on a non-commercial drone and extended the effective detection range to approximately 800 feet. 800 feet. That's roughly 2.5 football fields. It doesn't sound transformative until you think about what it replaces. A helicopter scanning from altitude is pointing a flashlight from a rooftop. A drone at 50 feet is walking through the building with the light held in front of you. The difference is everything. Wright confirmed publicly that the FBI received the drone prototype and could begin deploying it within days of the handover. He called the pacemaker the most unbiased witness in this entire investigation, because unlike every human source in the case, it produces data without input, without motive, and without the option to stay silent. If you're still here, subscribe, because cases like this only work when people stay and tell us where you're watching from. I love seeing my global family represent. Drop your country or city in the comments. But the technology only works if it's looking in the right place. The helicopter's initial flights concentrated on the Catalina foothills and the surrounding Tucson area. The investigation, however, had already moved further. On February 10th, the same day the FBI publicly released the doorbell camera footage showing the masked suspect, investigators executed a court-authorized search of a property in Rio Rico, a community in Santa Cruz County roughly 60 miles south of Tucson, approximately 20 minutes from the Mexican border. A man named Carlos Pelos, a delivery driver, was detained during a traffic stop and later released without charges. He denied any involvement. Investigators subsequently moved away from him as a suspect. But the geographic implication was significant. If the active search had reached 60 miles south, the initial grid over Catalina foothills may have been covering entirely the wrong stretch of desert. Then came additional ring camera footage. Newly released video from a camera positioned 2.5 miles from Nancy's home captured over a dozen vehicles moving through the area between midnight and 6 a.m. on the night of her disappearance. One of those vehicles appeared at 2:36 a.m., just 8 minutes after the pacemaker disconnected from her phone. An NBC News reporter drove a possible route between Nancy's house and that camera. The trip took approximately 6 minutes. Retired NYPD Detective David Carney noted that the search perimeter had already expanded well beyond the original 1.5 mile canvas, out to 2 miles and potentially beyond. The FBI confirmed it had reached out to Mexican authorities immediately, given how close the investigation had come to the border. Every additional mile the search perimeter expands changes the math for the signal sniffer entirely. A drone covering an 800-foot radius over a 2-mile search area is a manageable operation. A drone trying to work a 60-mile corridor between Tucson and the border is something else entirely. The question is not whether the technology works. The question is whether investigators are standing on the right ground when they use it. Now, before we go any further, this story matters. Not just for the Guthrie family, but for anyone with a loved one who could be vulnerable to something like this. If you believe this kind of investigative storytelling deserves to be seen, take a moment right now. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it with someone you care about. Because the more people who understand how these cases unfold, the better protected all of our families will be. Now, let's continue. Everything we have covered, the helicopter, the drone, the signal sniffer, the widening search perimeter, all of it is building toward a single moment. The moment the signal is found. But what can a pacemaker actually tell investigators once it is located? And what does recovery even look like when the strongest lead in an entire investigation isn't a fingerprint or a witness statement, but an electronic pulse coming from inside a missing woman's chest? Morgan Wright called the pacemaker the most unbiased witness in this case. And there is a reason for that framing. Modern pacemakers don't only regulate cardiac rhythm, they also log it. Heart rhythm activity, device performance, significant cardiac events. That data is stored on the device itself and does not require a phone connection to survive. That kind of data has demonstrated forensic value before. When actor Gene Hackman's body was recovered at his New Mexico home, data from his pacemaker helped investigators establish that he may have died nearly 10 days before he was found. When no other evidence could establish a time of death, the device could. The same logic applies here. If Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker is recovered, forensic analysis of its stored data could help build a medical timeline. When significant cardiac events occurred, when the device last recorded normal rhythm, and what happened in the time between. The pacemaker will not reconstruct the crime step by step, but it could answer the most essential question in this case. When did Nancy Guthrie's heart last beat normally? There is one distinction that must be made clearly here, one that changes how we interpret everything about this device. A pacemaker does not keep the heart beating. It regulates rhythm by sending small electrical impulses that prevent the heart from beating too slowly. If Nancy died, the pacemaker would continue to generate those impulses. It would continue transmitting its Bluetooth signal. The device does not sustain life. It records what the heart does. It has no control over the outcome. That means the signal sniffer cannot tell investigators whether Nancy is alive. It can only tell them where the pacemaker is. What they find when they arrive, that is a different question entirely. So let's walk through what that answer might look like. If the signal sniffer, drone-based, helicopter-mounted, or ground-level, detects Nancy's MAC address, the first thing that confirms is a position within the detection range. With the drone, that's approximately 800 feet. From there, investigators run multiple passes from different angles to triangulate, narrowing the position down. Then ground teams move in with handheld Bluetooth scanners to close the last 10 to 15 feet where the raw pacemaker signal is strongest. What happens next depends entirely on what they find. If the signal is detected in open terrain, desert ground, a field, the shoulder of a road, that scenario most likely points to remains. Recovery teams would secure the area. Forensic specialists would process the scene. The pacemaker would be extracted and its stored cardiac data analyzed, the same way Hackman's device established a timeline when no witness could. If the signal is detected inside a structure, a house, a building, a vehicle, the calculus changes completely. That could mean a living hostage situation. FBI hostage rescue protocols would activate immediately. Nancy's medical profile, her pacemaker dependency, her daily medication requirements, her limited mobility, her chronic pain, would make immediate medical response the first priority. An investigative theory reported by local media and attributed to a source familiar with the case suggests this may have begun as a burglary that escalated. That same source indicated the prevailing belief among investigators is that Nancy could still be alive. Sheriff Nanos declined to confirm a motive, describing it as speculative without a suspect in custody, but the theory matters for what it implies. If this was unplanned, if the person responsible never intended to take an 84-year-old woman, they may not have thought through what it means to hold someone who requires daily heart medication, cannot walk unassisted, lives in constant pain, and is carrying a device that has been broadcasting a locatable signal since the moment she left her home. The initial public warning that Nancy's medication could be fatal within 24 hours created enormous urgency in the first days of the search. But the medical picture may be more layered than that early framing suggested. Dr. Srihari Naidu, a cardiologist and professor at New York Medical College, explained that not all cardiac medications carry the same degree of urgency. Some, such as blood thinners or blood pressure medications, can be interrupted without immediate life-threatening consequences, though they raise longer-term risks, including stroke. The specific medications Nancy takes have not been disclosed publicly. If she is alive more than 30 days after her abduction, the medical reality is complicated, not necessarily impossible, but it would require either some form of basic care or a physical resilience that has exceeded what the early warnings implied. And then there is the other possibility, the one the family has acknowledged publicly. If the signal sniffer leads investigators not to a structure but to the desert floor, the pacemaker becomes the primary forensic instrument. Its stored data could establish an approximate time of death. It could reveal whether Nancy experienced cardiac distress during or after the abduction. It could provide a record of her final hours with a precision that no witness account and no confession could match. And for a family that has spent more than a month not knowing whether their mother is alive or suffering or already gone, even that answer, even the worst answer, could be the release they need. The cruelty of not knowing is its own particular kind of grief. The pacemaker can end it. Wherever you are in the world right now, drop your location in the comments below. This case has crossed borders and reached living rooms in countries Nancy Guthrie has never visited. People everywhere are following this story. Let us know where you're watching from. The technology exists. The pacemaker is transmitting. The drone prototype is in the FBI's hands. The manufacturer is cooperating. The only open question is whether investigators are searching the right ground before the momentum of this investigation dissipates. In late February, the FBI reduced its on-the-ground presence in Tucson and relocated its command post to Phoenix. ABC News reported that the shift should not be read as investigators withdrawing. NBC News linked the move to efforts to return Nancy's home to her family. The Pima County Sheriff's Department announced it is refocusing resources toward detectives specifically assigned to the case, and Nancy's home, held as an active crime scene for nearly 4 weeks, has been released back to her family. These are not the movements of an investigation expecting an imminent break. They are the movements of an investigation settling in for a long, methodical process. The sprint phase is over. The helicopter completed its passes. SWAT operations in the Catalina foothills produced no arrests. DNA recovered from a glove found 2 miles from Nancy's home was submitted to the National Codes database and came back without a match. A separate DNA profile collected from the property is still being processed at a laboratory in Florida, with concerns about whether the sample will yield anything usable. What remains is focused, technology-driven work, and the signal sniffer sits at the center of it. The battery is not the concern. Sheriff Nanos confirmed, based on manufacturer data, that Nancy's device has 6 to 7 years of remaining life on a 10-year battery. Bluetooth Low Energy is engineered to extend operational life precisely so a device like this one can keep running for years without a charge. The pacemaker will outlast every other element of this investigation. But the signal sniffer's effectiveness depends entirely on proximity. And every day without a detection means one of 2 things. The search has not reached the right area yet, or the pacemaker is somewhere the drone cannot easily penetrate. Underground, inside a heavily shielded structure, across a border, in terrain that hasn't been scanned. The pacemaker will keep transmitting. That is not the problem. The problem is whether investigators can reduce the search area faster than the trail loses heat. The combined reward in this case now stands at approximately $1.2 million. Savannah Guthrie contributed $1 million of that personally, specifying it can be paid in cash. The FBI added $100,000. An additional $102,500 has come in through the 88 Crime Stop tip line, including a $100,000 anonymous donation. More than 50,000 tips have been submitted across the FBI and Sheriff's Department tip lines combined. 1,500 new tips came in after Savannah increased the reward. And yet, none of those 50,000 tips has produced an arrest. That gap tells you something important about why the signal sniffer matters so much in a case like this one. Tips require a human decision. Someone who knows something has to decide to act on that knowledge. They have to pick up the phone. They have to override whatever fear, loyalty, or self-interest is keeping them from speaking. 50,000 tips, and not one has broken the case open. The signal sniffer requires none of that. It doesn't need a confession. It doesn't need someone to work up the courage to come forward. It needs proximity. Physics doesn't protect a secret. Physics doesn't have a reason to stay silent. If you've made it this far into this story, you are not a casual viewer. You are invested. Drop a comment right now, just the words, "I am still here." And let us see who's watching, because the people who stay until the end of a story like this are the exact reason we can keep telling them. The signal sniffer is a machine. The drone is a machine. The pacemaker is a machine. But the people waiting for what those machines find, they are not. In the first days after Nancy disappeared, Savannah Guthrie appeared on video alongside her brother Cameron and her sister Annie. They spoke directly to whoever had taken their mother. They called her mommy. They said the family was ready to talk. They asked for proof of life. They said they would pay. A week later, the tone shifted. Savannah addressed the public. She said the family was at an hour of desperation. She said she believed her mother was still out there. She asked strangers, anyone, anywhere, to report anything that seemed even slightly unusual. By mid-February, the public statements had become quieter, more personal. Savannah posted a video marking 2 weeks since her mother was taken. She addressed whoever was responsible or whoever knew where Nancy was. She said they were not lost or alone. She said it was never too late to do the right thing. She said the family was there and that they believed in the essential goodness of every human being. On February 24th, the language shifted again. Savannah announced the $1 million reward, but she used a specific word. Not rescue. Recovery. She said, "We still believe in a miracle. We also know that she may be lost. She may already be gone." The family donated $500,000 to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, an act that reaches past their own grief toward every other family living through something like this. And on March 2nd, day 31, Savannah was seen in public for the first time since her mother vanished. She went to Nancy's home in the Catalina foothills with Annie and Cameron. They laid flowers outside. No cameras were invited. No statement was released. Just 3 adult children standing at the door their mother walked through for the last time. The family isn't monitoring the signal sniffer. They don't talk in press conferences about Bluetooth MAC addresses or drone detection radii. They are doing what families do. They are leaving the light on. But somewhere behind their grief, a team of investigators is operating a machine designed to hear the faintest electronic whisper from their mother's chest. And if it works, if the drone flies low enough, slow enough, over the right patch of ground at the right moment, it could give them the one thing they have been asking for since February 1st. An answer. In Tucson, the community has not moved on. A candlelight vigil was held at St. Philip's in the Hills Episcopal Church. A 4-foot banner covered in handwritten messages of support was placed outside KVOA, the local NBC affiliate where Savannah Guthrie once worked as a young reporter. Long before the Today Show, long before any of this. Neighbors have submitted footage from every camera on every street. Strangers across the country have called the tip lines. An entire community is holding its breath alongside a family, and an investigation is banking on technology to deliver what 50,000 human voices have so far been unable to provide. Nancy Guthrie has been missing since February 1st, 2026. If you have any information, anything at all, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. That number is 1-800-225-5324. Or you can submit a tip directly at tips.fbi.gov. The reward is real. The need is urgent. And the family is still waiting. If this story moved you, if you believe cases like this one deserve sustained, rigorous, victim-centered coverage, then do something about it right now. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. This channel exists because of the people who stay, who share, and who show up. That's you. And we are grateful for every single one of you. Don't just watch. Be part of what keeps these stories alive. Somewhere out there, in a structure, in the open desert, across a border, in a place no search team has reached yet, Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker is doing what it was engineered to do. It is regulating a heart rhythm. It is logging cardiac data. And according to everyone working this case, it is still reaching outward, still broadcasting a signal into the air, searching for a device to pair with. The FBI has the technology to hear it. They have the drone. They have the manufacturer's cooperation and the unique MAC address. They know the exact frequency. They know the battery has years of life remaining. The signal is real. The technology is real. What remains is the distance between the machine and the woman. That distance might be 800 feet. It might be 60 miles. It might be the width of a border that hasn't been crossed yet in this investigation. But every day the search continues. That distance has the potential to shrink. And somewhere out there, a pacemaker sends another signal into the dark, patient, steady, unanswered, until it isn't.